Math 7. Today we're going to be talking about fractions, decimals, and percents, and the conversion between those three things. So first, what is a fraction? And a lot of this will be review for you guys, but we're just going to go over it anyway. So a fraction is obtained when we divide a whole into equal portions or parts. So for example, if you have a whole pizza and you divide it into 12 pieces, every piece would be 1/12 of that pizza. So you need to think about fractions as a whole thing with equal parts, okay? So when you write A divided by B, you could write it as a fraction. So remember that this line right here means divide, okay? So A over B means we divide that whole number into B equal portions and then consider A of them. So this number here being your numerator, the number of parts being considered, the bar is your division again, and then the denominator is the number of portions we divide the whole into. Okay, so again, remember if you have a whole pizza and we divide it into 4, 6, 8 pieces, one whole pizza is 8 over 8, so 8 pieces of 8 as your whole, which equals 1. If we just shade one of those, then we've got 1/8, right? Okay, so remember also that your denominator can never, ever, ever be 0 because you cannot divide a whole number into 0 pieces. So types of fractions. Your most common fraction that we deal with on an everyday basis is your common fraction. So when you write a fraction like this, we call that a symbolic representation. So we're representing it as a symbol. Okay, and we can also represent it in words, so we could call this 4/7. We can do it as a diagram like I did in the back page over here. That's a diagram. Okay, so we can shade those, and we did some practice with these on the sheets already. So we've got these diagrams, so here 4 pieces shaded out of 7, 4 pieces shaded out of 7, or on a number line where you have your number line broken up into 7 parts, and then you mark 4/7 on the number line. And we'll be doing all of these in the next couple days, okay? Those are your common fractions. So within your common fractions, you can have either proper or improper fractions. So now remember that a fraction that has a numerator, so that's the number on top, that is smaller than the number on the bottom, the denominator, is called a proper fraction. So 4/7 would be a proper fraction. If it was the other way around, if the numerator is greater than the denominator, it's an improper fraction. Okay, and what we do with improper fractions, remember, is we convert those into mixed numbers. So, for example, 7/4 as a mixed number would be 1 3/4 because 4 goes into 7 one time, right? And then 7 minus 4 is 3, so there's 3 left over, so that would be 3/4. And we can represent that as a picture over here too. One full one, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, and 1, 2, 3 pieces left over gives you 7 pieces of 4 as your whole, which gives you 1 full and 3/4. Most of the fractions that you guys are going to be dealing with in the next couple of years at least are considered rational numbers. Okay, and so rational numbers is a number which can be written in this form, where both numbers are integers, so you can have negative fractions, and B does not equal 0. That's what this means, is does not equal 0. Okay, so most of these fractions, again, that you deal with are going to be rational numbers. Simplifying fractions. So we've done some work with this as well, but it simply means that you are canceling your common factors in your numerator and your denominator to take it down to its smallest form. So when we write a fraction as a rational number with the smallest possible denominator, it's considered to be in its lowest term. So again, if you take 7/21, okay, both are divisible by 7, right? So you need to go back and use your divisibility rules. So if you divide 7 by 7, you get 1. 21 divided by 7 is 3. So your simplest form, or your smallest term, is 1/3, okay? When it's as low as it can go, then it's in simplest form. So if you look here, if we start from the back on this side, 7/21 can also be 4/12 or 3/9 or 2/6, all the way down to 1/3. So this is the smallest it can go. So this is, of all of these fractions, which are what we call equivalent fractions, this one is the smallest. So that would be its simplest form. So whenever on a test it says to take everything to simplest form, you have to make sure you've gotten it down as far as it can possibly go. Okay, so anything that is an equal fraction. So 1/3. So if we had, again, if we had a pizza split into 3 pieces, and that was 1/3, and then we had a pizza split into 6 pieces, okay, and we color in 2, 6. If you were to overlay this with this, it would be the same amount. That means that they're equivalent fractions. They equal the exact same thing, okay? So this is your diagrammatic form again, showing you that these 2 pieces are exactly the same, even though this is 1/3 and this is 2/6. And if we were to draw 4/12, again, it would be exactly the same size with the exact same amount of space shaded in. So that makes an equivalent fraction. And how do you find an equivalent fraction? You just multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So again, if let's say we start with 1/4, we want to find an equivalent fraction. You can find an equivalent fraction by multiplying this by 3, which will give you 3, and multiplying this by 3, which would give you 12. And there's an equivalent fraction, okay? So that can be simplified back down because 3 divided by 3 is 1, 12 divided by 3 is 4, which gets you right back to 1/4, okay? So that's an equivalent fraction. Converting fractions to decimals. So numbers can be written as fractions, decimals, and percents, as we know. And so as an example, 4 can be written as 4/1, which is a whole number, or 4.0. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, you simply divide the numerator by the denominator. Now I know that you guys have learned in the past that you can convert your denominators to 25 or 50 or anything that is a multiple of 100, but there are some denominators that you are not going to be able to do that to, okay? So it's just way simpler to just go with this rule and use this rule every time. So dividing your numerator by your denominator. So 8 divided by 13, okay, to a decimal would be 8 divided by 13, which is 0.615, which we could then round to 0.62. Now remember we talked earlier that when a decimal ends like this, it's called a terminating decimal, okay? Repeating decimals don't end. So 1 divided by 3 gives you 0.333333, which we can represent as 3 with a line over it, or sometimes you'll see it with a dot over it. Okay, you can do whichever one you like. If the repeating decimal is more than 1 digit, you write all the repeating digits and put a line or dot above it. So if your repeating decimal is 0.645645, it's the 645 that's repeating. So you would write 0.645 with a line over everything. So 0.62 can be further converted to a percent by multiplying the decimal by 100. Why do we multiply by 100? Because percentages is always out of 100. So 0.62 times 100 equals 62%. Faster way to do this is just to move the decimal 2 spots to the right because there's 2 zeros and 100. So if you had 0.375, we would just move that decimal 2 spots to the right and you would end up with 37.5%. Converting decimals back to fractions. All right, so you take your terminating decimals back to fractions. You have to look at how many digits are behind the decimal point. So for example, 0.5 is only 1 digit, 0.98 is 2 digits, 0.876 is 3 digits, and so on and so forth. Once you have the number of digits, that's how many zeros in the denominator you need to make the fraction. The numerator of your fraction is always the decimal in whole numbers. So 0.5 is 1 digit, so 1 0. So it would be 5, which is your decimal number is your numerator, over 10, 1 0. Okay? 0.98, 98 is your decimal number is your numerator, 2 zeros over 100. And 0.86, 86 is your decimal number, over 3 zeros per 1,000. All right? Then you simplify those down to lowest terms, obviously. So 5/10 would be 1/2. Converting a repeating decimal a little bit different. You still need the number of digits and the decimal is still the numerator, but rather than zeros, you use 9. So 0.3 repeating would be 3 over 9 because it's 1 digit, so only 1 9, but no 1 in front of it this time. Remember that division by 10 will always give you a terminating decimal. All right, so division by 9 will always give you a repeating decimal. So if this is a repeating decimal, it has to be over 9. Okay, so rather than a 10, you just drop it down 1 to a 9. And again, your decimal is still your numerator. 0.65, still your numerator on top, but 2 decimal places here, so 99. Okay, again, 0.876. If that was all repeating, then it would be 876 over 999. Okay, and then again, you simplify back down to its lowest terms.